Hello and welcome back to Breeze GIS. Today we have a video for you looking at how to use the Select Layer by Attribute tool and definition queries within ArcGIS. So today with me I have a data set for the US and it's all of the counties in the US, and what I'll be doing today is isolating a portion of this data using the Select Layer by Attribute tool and a definition query. So before we get started, I want to talk about the importance of both of these tools. So if you have a project, if you're working on a GIS project, and let's say you have thousands of rows of data. So for example, I'm going to open up the attribute table within this US counties layer. So let's say you have thousands of rows of data like this. I have 3,368 rows of data, and you're trying to do a GIS project that only uses a portion of all of this data. So you want to use only a small portion of a large data set of data that you have. So you could, in order to isolate the data that you want from a large data set, you could manually go in here or like Excel or something and select only the rows of data that you want. But realistically, that's going to take a large amount of time and that's going to be extremely inefficient. And if you mess up, you'll have to start the selection process all over again. So to make this process a lot easier and literally, cut it down to only a few minutes, the Select Layer by Attribute tool and definition queries can make this process a whole lot simpler. So essentially, to sum up what I'm trying to say is, if you have a large set of data and you only want to isolate a small portion of it without having to spend a long time selecting data manually, you can use these tools to do that and to cut the time a lot shorter. So what we're going to be using is we're going to be using the time zone attribute today to separate a portion of the US, specifically the eastern portion of the US, out and creating its own layer. So let's say I'm working on a GIS project and I only want to use US counties that have the time zone east label. So I only want to work with Eastern time zone US counties. So what we can do is we can select all this data and create a separate layer for it to isolate that data, because that's the only data I want to use for this project. So inside of the time zone, there's a lot of different data and I don't want to manually select all this. So what I'm going to be doing is using those tools to do that. So enough explanation, let's actually get into the actual process. So to get started, what I'm going to do is I'm going to first clear my selection, and I'm going to create a duplicate layer using the Control C and Control V buttons to copy and paste to create a new layer, because I'm going to manipulate one data set, and so I want to keep a copy of the base data that I have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this layer. I'm going to call this US Counties, and I'm going to label it East. So this will be the layer that I'll be manipulating, and I only want to select data that's in the Eastern US. So what I'm going to do first is we need to use the Select Layer by Attribute tool first. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the toolbox. So we can go to the Geoprocessing toolbox in View, or you can go to Analysis and you can click Tools. Both of those are going to open up the toolbox for you. And what we're going to do is we're going to type in Select Layer, if I can type, by Attribute. So this tool right here is what we're going to be using. So first, input rows, we want to use US Counties East because this is the layer that we want to manipulate. Next, for the selection type, we want to do Add to Current Selection. So right now I have nothing selected. There is no selection. So, and I think you could also do like New Selection if you wanted, but we're just going to do Add to Current Selection. So all these options are just adjusting the selection that you have. So we're going to be adding rows to our selection. So the next thing we're going to look at is we have this line of code right here, and that's going to be selecting our data for us. So we're going to say, so remember, for this example, all I want is the US counties that are in the Eastern time zone. So what I'm going to be doing is selecting all of the rows of data that have the Eastern time zone label, which is this E right here. That represents a county that's in the Eastern time zone. So I'm going to be selecting all of the rows of data that belong in the Eastern time zone, and I'm going to be using this field right here, this time zone field, to do that. So what I'm going to do is say where, and I'm going to say time zone. So where in the time zone field is equal to E for all of the Eastern counties, we're going to select those. So where, whatever field you're interested in selecting from, and is equal to whatever attribute you're interested in isolating. So I'm going to hit the run on that, and it's going to select all of the rows of data that have the Eastern label within this time zone field. And so I've used that attribute to isolate all of the data that I want. So now that we have all that selected, let's go ahead and get into the process of creating a definition query to isolate all of this data into its own layer. So what we're going to do first is we can go ahead and exit out of that. So if you first of all, if you ever want to clear out, let's say you have like a bunch of extra data label, you can always use the clear button to clear out any data that you have selected. So I'm going to hit run again and select all of the data I'm interested in. So it has all of these counties selected, and now we can go into the definition query. I just wanted to make that quick note. And you can use the switch button to switch your selection within your attribute table. So now the first thing we need to do before we can create a definition query is we need to create a new field. So we're going to go into calculate, and we're going to go, we're going to go to add. Calculate is not quite yet. We're going to go to add, and it's going to pull up the field menu here, and it allows us to manipulate all the fields. What we're going to do is we're going to create a new field called counties E, which represents all of the eastern counties. And then for the data type, you have short, long, float, double, text, and date to select from. All we're interested in is the text field, because I'm just going to be entering text into this field. So I've created a field name and a data type label, and now I'm going to go up to the save button and save that, and it's going to apply that change. So let's go ahead and exit out and go back into our data table. It's going to reload, and it has added this new field for us. And so now we're going to enter information into this field. So we're going to go to the calculate button next. So it's going to calculate field. And it's inside the input table we're interested in is U.S. Counties East. And then the field name that we're interested in is the new field that we just created, which is Counties E. So Counties East. So what we're going to do is we actually don't need to select anything in this. All we need to do is select the new field that we just created. There's nothing in here. And we're going to go down to Counties E, and we're going to enter, since it is I made a typo there. There we go. Since this is a text field, I'm going to enter inside of, the quotations there. Yes, that's all I'm going to enter. So I'm going to hit apply. So what that is going to do is it's going to enter text within all of the fields that we have selected. So in here, you could say anything. So as long as it's in the quotations, you can say anything. You could say, no, yes, whatever you want, and it's going to apply that inside of the field. So whatever you put in here, inside of all of the layers that you have selected by the select layer by attribute table tool, you can input whatever text you want inside of all the layers that you have selected within the new fields you created. So I created this new field, and I went into calculate field, and now I'm going to put in yes. And all I'm doing is just creating just text to isolate it. So what this is essentially saying is, Counties East, is this a county within the Eastern time zone? Yes, it is. And so now I have all that selected. If I wanted to, I could switch all this up, and I could switch to all of the other data, and I could put no. So I have all of the other data selected that's not an Eastern time zone, and I'm in calculate field, and I'm in the Counties East field, and I'm going to hit no, and it's going to put no inside of all of those fields. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back, and that is all we need to do within the calculate field. And so I'm going to exit out of that. Now we can actually create our definition query now that we have this new field created. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click and go into properties for whatever layer we're interested in working with. We're going to go into definition query right here, and we're going to create a new definition query. And what this is we are essentially now isolating the data that we want. So we're going to go to where, and Counties E is equal to, and our options will be yes or no. So these are the two text options that we created, yes or no. So we're going to say where in this field, Counties E, the data is equal to yes, we are going to hit apply. So that is the definition query we have just created. We're going to hit apply. And then now we have separated all of the data that we wanted to. So I'm going to uncheck. On the if you make a copy like I did, make sure you have the copy unchecked. So now I have isolated all of the data that I want. That data has now been, thanks to the definition query, removed. And all I have selected right now and all that's in my attribute table is all of the counties that have the East time zone label. And that's all that shows up on my map. So I can go into clear and deselect. And now I have created a layer that's only all of the counties in the eastern US. Thanks to the select layer by attribute tool and the definition query I created. So if I want to remove this, I can go into properties and I can remove this definition query and it will give me all my data back. And it will restore the layer to how it was before. But for now, this is what I want. If I'm working on my GIS project, I now have the layer that I want that's only all of the counties within the eastern US. And I have my backup original data if I want to go back to that as well. And that is that. That's how you use the select layer by attribute tool and the definition query as well. So an important note is both of these tools have relatively infinite number of applications. You can use these for so many different things, and I know I'll be using them a lot in future projects, but I just wanted to give you an introduction with how to use those and an application for those tools. So that is all for today. That is how you use the select layer by attribute tool in a definition query. I really appreciate you watching. I hope you learned something, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you again, and bye.